Good evening, and welcome to the Municipal Candidates Forum in Kernersville, North Carolina, October 19th, 2021. We're very glad that you're here on behalf of the Kernersville Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, our staff team, our volunteers, and our Governmental Affairs Committee. Welcome tonight. At this time, if you are able, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all. And if you would stay standing, please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this community. We thank you for these candidates who care so much about where our community goes and how successful it is. Lord, we appreciate you allowing us to know what to say this evening and to wrap your arms around us in everything that's positive. We appreciate you putting us here on earth, and we really love that you have allowed us to be a part of your kingdom. It's in your Son's precious name that we pray. Amen. If you would please be seated. At this time, I am going to introduce Dana Caudill Jones. She's our moderator this evening. Dana?
Good evening. Thank you for being with us here in person and online. Candidates, on behalf of myself and all of us here, we thank you for wanting to serve this community. It is something to be said for someone who puts themselves out there and really wants to serve their fellow man. So thank you very much for that. To recap kind of what we're doing for tonight, each of you will have 1 minute for an opening statement. We will then move into the question phase. You will have 30 seconds to answer those questions, and then you will each have 2 minutes for a closing statement. Okay, so earlier today you drew numbers to kind of put you in your order, and we will just start with you, John Stanley, and we will go down the line for an opening statement.
Well, I'm John Stanley, and I'm humbled to be here today. I'm humbled that I've been blessed to have the opportunity to live in this great town, to live in this great country. It was my passion, and it was the passion of our founding fathers to fight for justice and liberty, and that's what founded this town and this nation. We've been able to foster a great country and a great town here in Kernersville, and I look forward to tonight's forum. I look forward to the questions, and I want to thank everybody that showed up, and I want to thank everybody that has run for this candidacy. It means a lot to this town that we have so many willing people to stick their necks out for the whole town. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin?
Good evening, everybody. I'm glad to see so many people here that are taking an interest in everything. And like John said, I'm extremely grateful to be running with so many good people that I've gotten to know over the last few weeks. There really is a good group of people here that want to serve the community. I got involved here as a candidate for Alderman to be serving at the local level. I believe that the community's best served and the people of our community are best heard and listened to here at the local level in local government. And I want to make sure that my candidacy, and if I'm elected, my position as Alderman is used to reach out to everybody in the community to make sure everybody has a voice, to make sure everybody is heard equally, and no matter where in Kernersville you live or how long you've been here, you're represented by someone who is transparent and fair. Thank you again for being here.
Good evening. My name is Chris Thompson. I moved here in 1995. Wife Sue Ellen is a teacher at Kernersville Elementary School, and I've got 2 young children. I say children, there's 8 teenagers, 1 boy and 1 girl who they think they're 25 at this point. served on many boards around the town. I've been involved since I've been here. I've built over 150 houses in the town of Kernersville, being the general contractor. I'm also a real estate broker and just recently purchased a real estate appraisal firm. Running for my 4th term, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Good evening, folks. As we said. Yep. Thank you, Madam. You're always looking out for me. My name is J.R. Gorham, and I've been here in Kernersville about 30 years. And I want you folks to know that as up to this day, my the accomplishment that I am so proud of is that I was born to a 7th grade educated sharecropper. And the second thing that I'm proud of is that I had the opportunity to meet and marry my college sweetheart. And we have 3 children, Tony, Jamie, and Joshua. Been here for 30 years here in Kernersville. Used to work at the First Citizens Bank, and I'm the first African-American general in the North Carolina National Guard. And I'm here to solicit your vote to be an alderman here in Kernersville. Thank you so very much.
Good evening. My name is Michael Lischke, and I'm proud to be here. And my wife and I, Amy, have raised 4 kids in this community. We moved here 25 years ago thinking this was going to be a short stop on our plan. And after our initial contracts over at the Wake Forest School of Medicine popped up, we thought, well, we could do another 3 years. So 25 years later and 4 kids, we're here for the long haul. It's a great community. We've been very, very fortunate to be here with our kids, and have been involved in many, many things in my career throughout Forsyth County, the state of North Carolina, nationally and internationally. But I've never done anything local right here in the town of Kernersville. I always wanted to do it, and the time seemed right. So when I was encouraged to do this many years ago, I kept putting it off, and now I'm in. And this cast of characters in front of you up here, we've gotten to know each other pretty well, and we are a cast of characters.
Good evening. Thank you for coming out, having a look at your candidates. I'm Kenny Cruz. I ran Cruise Wrecker here in town for 36 years on my own. Prior to that, I worked for my Uncle Odell at Amoco Station here across from Pierce Jefferson as I attended East Forsyth. And so I've been here 75 years, and there's no better place. And I love being a candidate for you, that I can help folks. I understand a lot of the folks that have problems and needs, and I want to be there to help them. And I'm amazed at how far we've came, from one fire truck to a hospital to all the police and rescue we have now. And this is a great town, and we have a great opportunity with good leadership that we've had thus far. And thank you, and I ask you for your vote.
Hey, my name is Tammy Coulter. First and foremost, I'm a wife and a mother. I have 2 children. One is in their 2nd year of college, and my son is a 5th grader. So I have a little bit of a gap there. My husband and I own 2 small businesses in Kernersville. I am a 25-year banking professional. I actually just left my job in July to focus solely on our small business. I currently serve on the Kernersville Chamber of Commerce Board and Executive Board. I also serve for the Kernersville Medical Center Advisory Board. I've been volunteering in town since 2002, I guess. No, 2000, see, my daughter's 2002, so 2004 when we moved back to Kernersville. I am a 2-time breast cancer survivor. So I say that to say this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and that is something that I've overcome. And I'm happy to be here today. I'm happy to see everyone out, and I hope that I can take this to the next level for the community.
Hey folks, my name's John Barrow. I've lived here in Kernersville for probably about 65 years. I love Kernersville. I've been a paper boy, worked in the grocery store, flipped hamburgers, done all kinds of stuff here. The last 30 years I practiced law, criminal defense law, something I love doing, very passionate about it. Don't know how I wound up being a lawyer, but anyhow, I got there, and I love doing it. I'm married, and I have 3 sons, all of them grown. And this time in the world, I just felt like that it was time for me to step up and serve the town of Kernersville. I know a lot about what goes on here, and I think I could add to and make life good, or maybe even better for some folks here. I just ask for you to vote for me. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Toby Bost. My name's familiar. I've worked with the Cooperative Extension Service since 1989 as an agricultural extension agent. So when my wife and I moved our family to Kernersville 4 years ago, I wanted to be more involved in the community. And I've been serving in the county capacity as elected supervisor. So I thought I would really like to get to know people in this town and be more engaged here locally. So that's more or less why I was interested in running. I certainly am passionate about conservation, about natural resources, protecting our land, helping landowners, working with farmers. I love greenways. I love outdoors and biking. So if you want to get my attention, talk about those things. So I love environment. Involved with the community garden on the corner. So if you see me on the corner of Oakhurst and South Cherry, stop and we'll chat because I'm usually out there a few times a week. So thank you all, and thank you for the Chamber and the Kernersville News for helping us. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Bill Apple, and I have lived in Kernersville for the last right at 20 years. And those have been some of the finest years of my life. The question that I've been asked more often than any other, is why in the world are you running? Dana, you've been asked that a few times too. Why in the world would you want to do this? And really there are 2 reasons. One is that I think it has become trite to say, I want to give back to the community, but I've been really fortunate that my parents sacrificed enough to send me to college, and everything, including my Air Force commission, has flowed from that. So I don't want to put that on a shelf. The second reason is that since I retired in March of 2000, I've been searching for purpose in my life. And somehow this seems to be it. So I offer you my purpose. Thank you.
My name is Joe Penix. I've lived here 3 or 4 months longer than anybody at these tables. I've been here 75 years, a few months longer than Kenny. But Kenny was talking about the fire truck. When I was a kid, my grandfather had a drugstore on the square, and I literally grew up in that drugstore and would follow the fire truck on my bicycle every time Mr. Stewart would crank it up. And back then they had no forms of communication, no radios or anything, and you knew where to turn when they dropped out the flour out of the back of the fire truck. That was the street that you turned on. So that we've gone from that to the computer age. I'm about 1/10 of the way through. Can I keep going?
Maybe we need to hear those stories a little later, though. I'm still interested. Okay, so thank you very much for giving us a little bit about yourself in your opening statement. As we go forward with the questions, I will call out 3 people's names, 2 people's names, and then state the question. And in kind of so that we can get through as many questions as possible, I really would only like to say it one time. But if you need me to repeat it, please ask. Okay. All right. So John Stanley, J.R. Gorham, and Bill Apple. Many citizens believe that the town of Kernersville needs more transparency with respect to informing, educating citizens on upcoming decisions the town and on town spending. What specific ideas or policies would you support or bring forward to promote more transparency around town governance? John, we'll start with you.
Well, as Joe said, we are in a digital age, and getting more involved on social media, getting more involved with the digital aspects of everything could be a great step to encouraging more growth within the visitors coming in and getting people to come in and communicate. So I think that we should go ahead and focus on social.
Thank you. JR?
Well, I think that we as a township should talk to our residents to see how they want us to communicate with them. I don't think that we should assume that we know the way that they want us to, to communicate with them. We have people coming from different walks of life. Some people are into the computer age and some people are not. And so we have to find out from our residents how they want to be communicated with and then try to follow suit and meet their needs.
Bill?
I think there are basically 5 things that I would want to hit, a lot of which we are already doing. One is that's open meetings for all of our citizens, both the briefing sessions or agenda sessions and the formal Board of Aldermen meetings once a month. We have great local newspaper coverage through the Kernersville News. We have online access to agenda items and links to each of the details within that. We have online access on YouTube links to our Board of Aldermen. Most importantly, though, we need to be out and about listening to people.
Thank you. Okay, Tammy Coulter, Michael Lischke, and Joe Penix. Tell us about your leadership style and explain why that approach will make you a better alderman.
I would describe my leadership style really as hands-on. I try to get as much information as I can. We've learned a lot from running small businesses, so we have to be leaders, but we also have to be doers. So we can't just sit behind a desk and assume that we can tell people what to do or what's best for them.
Thank you.
So I'm of the mindset that I have lots of ideas, and some would call me very opinionated. I'd probably own that on a regular day. But I also know that I don't have always the best idea. And so my leadership style is I truly seek out people who I know have a different opinion and a different lens than I do. One person can't make a single good decision, but a group of people who all come to the table with the intent of being helpful and supportive can.
Great.
Well, I think my leadership style is basically built around calmness. I like for everyone to get along. I think the way to get along is to listen to everybody, take their thoughts to heart, before you make a judgment or make a comment. And that basically is how I've led all my life.
Thank you. Kevin Hansford, Kenny Cruz, and John Barrow. How do you plan on making residents part of the decision-making process for our town?
I think that one of the things that doesn't go far enough is to say, we have an open door. We're here. If you want to show up to the meetings, come on in and voice your opinions. I think we can do a better job at going out into the community, whether that be through social media, whether that be showing up at people's meetings or protests or homeowners meetings when they have an issue. And we really need to get out to the community and speak to people one-on-one, put it on social media, really drive to get people involved and hear what they have to say.
I live one house up from the house I was born and raised in. In my business, I was all over the place, and I've had the same phone number for about 50 years. So I communicate with the folks, and I listen to them. I see a lot of problems that they have, and I ask them if they have a problem to let one of us aldermen know, or either come in and I'll get them with the right department if we can take care of it and come to a satisfactory decision.
John.
Hi. People always ask me what I'm running for when they see me because I never met a stranger. I always talk to people. I've moved around this town. I know a ton of people. And you have to do that if you want to know what's going on. And I believe my style would be, just to communicate with everybody, like I have. The door's always open. It always has been. And that's the way I'd approach it.
Thank you. Chris Thompson and Toby Bost. As a member of the Board of Aldermen, you only have one vote, and it takes at least a majority for a measure to pass or fail. How will you work with your fellow board members, staff, and the mayor to influence decisions made by the board?
I think the biggest concern there is to make sure you're as educated as you can be to make a sound decision for the town and the citizens. That entails meeting with the department heads, town manager, listening to the citizens as to what they may see depending on what the situation is, which I think we've done a real good job over the last 6 years since I've been on the board, to make the best sound decision that we possibly can.
Thank you. Toby?
Well, I would certainly work on consensus with my colleagues, with the mayor and department chairs to make sure that we had all the information. So I think fact finding is critical. We certainly should take the citizens. I like that reply. Take the citizens' input and call key leaders in the community. I think that's what we have to do to build a strong community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, John, JR, and Bill. The availability of public transportation is very limited to Kernersville citizens. Do you believe public transportation is important, and what would you do to improve access to public transportation, if so? John?
I do believe public transportation is very important. I believe in sidewalks. I believe in a bus route, maybe even a senior care bus route, things of that nature where people can't normally do it on their own. But I also believe in the open market and having the market provide for those needs.
JR?
Yeah, I also believe that public transportation is necessary. Kernersville is a growing and thriving community, and whether we like it or not, we are going to face growth, and we need to be prepared for that, and we need to provide transportation for the least of us, some of our marginalized people that sometimes we often forget in our decision-making process. So, yes, public transportation is a must for Kernersville.
Bill?
I do not think that Kernersville, a town the size of Kernersville, can afford to provide its own independent public transportation system. I do think that we can more cooperatively and more effectively utilize a partnership with PART, Piedmont Area Regional Transit System. And I think we could perhaps have more accessible sites for pickup and drop off within town. I don't think we can afford an independent system.
Thank you. Okay, Tammy Coulter, Michael Lischke, and Joe Penix. We hear a lot of political and community rhetoric using terms of inclusivity, equality, equity, diversity. What importance do those terms have to you, and what do you think is the place that they have in local government? Tammy.
I'm sorry, can you repeat? That was a big question.
That is this a long one.
That was a lot.
Okay, one more. We hear a lot of political and community rhetoric using the terms inclusivity, equality, equity, and diversity. What importance do those terms have to you personally, and what do you think is the place that they have in local government?
So I think the place that they have in local government is they all have a place in local government in the sense that we have to serve a broad community that is diverse. We have to include everyone, and that's not always easy, but we have to, when we wake up in the morning, we can't assume that everyone is just like us, and that my needs are their needs as well. So I think all of those need to be in local government.
Thank you. Michael?
So I believe very strongly that it is critical in my personal life, in my professional life, in my children's lives, and in our lives. I think we are all diverse in our own ways, and I think it's the rhetoric can get a little tough at times because we all are using the same terms, but we're afraid to have the conversations to define it. So I'm a huge proponent. I do it a lot in my professional work, and I think in any form of government and democracy, it's absolutely critical.
Thank you. Joe?
Well, you ask about how it affects you personally. I grew up in this town when there were 3,000 people. And my grandfather, who had a drugstore right on the corner, was a great role model. He served on this board 40 plus years. And he always taught me to treat everybody equally. And that's the way I try to be.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, Kevin Hansford, Kenny, and John Barrow. Many of our current elected officials have served in office for multiple terms. Do you support term limits for the office of mayor and alderman? Why or why not? Kevin.
I do support term limits for all of those offices. I think political offices all should have term limits. I'm not the perfect person to answer what those term limits should always be, but if you want a true representation of local community or of a people in general, you can't do that without rotating through new government officials and have people that are teachers, doctors, lawyers, working men, working women of all different genders, races, and religious backgrounds. Thanks.
Thank you. Kenny?
Well, I'm not for that. I think if we're all voted in, and if we're doing a good job, vote for us. If we're doing a bad job, don't vote for us. Look what we have in Washington right now, and it's term limits. It may work there, but I don't think in our town where people work with people, we need to have our citizens to be able to make their own decisions as to whether we're qualified and we deserve another term. Thank you.
John?
I agree with Kenny. I don't see any need for term limits at local government. I mean, if you're not doing a good job, they'll vote you out every 2 years. And if you're doing a good job, they'll vote you back in. When I grew up here, Roger Swisher was mayor of Kernersville probably for 35 years. And he did a lot of good. And if you want the continuity year after year, then you kind of need some of the same people in place. And if the public supports that, that's what happens. And that's the way it works. It's called democracy.
Thank you. Okay, Chris Thompson and Toby Bost. Please share a time in your professional life when you have made a mistake and explain how you dealt with that mistake.
Gosh, I've made a lot of mistakes. I don't know if I have time to explain them all. I think as humans, we all make mistakes along the way that we may regret or that we know that we can't go back on. I don't know that I can name an exact one, but you learn from them and you move on to the next role and make sure you do a better job the next time.
Toby?
Well, I told my wife if I was stumped, I'm just going to say I'm for world peace. So this may be one of those cases, but I've made a lot of mistakes, but I'll tell you my core values, faith, family, and freedom. And as a child, actually 4 siblings raised by a World War II Navy vet, we heard a lot about freedom. So I think that's the important thing, to make sure our generation, our kids, know the price of freedom. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next question. John, JR, and Bill. Name one thing that you believe is unappealing about Kernersville and say what you would propose to change about that weakness.
Unappealing. Maybe because we're such a great town, it might be unappealing to other people, but I don't know how to change that. I don't want to change that. Let's just keep doing great things.
Okay, Mr. Gore?
I think one of the issues that we need to address in our community is the fact that we need more diversity in our leadership. I've been here in Kernersville for 30 years, and I've seen some change here in Kernersville, but I have not seen very much change in the leadership, and everything rise and fall on leadership. And I would like to see more leadership positions given opportunity for diversity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gorham. Bill?
I think that we are at sort of a critical mass with the population as of last year of just over 26,000. We are building in or growing into problems that larger communities have. I think that if I were going to try to change something, it would be for us to better utilize the economies of scale available to us, like PART and like some of the planning for waste management.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Coulter, Mr. Lischke, and Mr. Penix. Kernersville businesses, like many across the country, are struggling to find workers, especially in areas of trade and retail. As Alderman, what policy or program would you support to help remedy the shortage of qualified workers in our town?
That's a tough one in 30 seconds. So we are a small business and we struggle with just that every single day. I'm not sure that I can come up with one policy immediately to correct that, because we're living it every day and we haven't figured it out just yet, why we can't get people to work, why we can't, I think that pay doesn't matter at this point. We're in a very different environment.
True. Michael?
Yeah, this is a tough question. I think that the town of Kernersville has a role to support organizations who are in town, like the Chamber of Commerce, who does this work very well. The community college that's here, in the branch that's here in Kernersville. I know I need a plumber, and I need HVAC, and I need roofers for my own house. And quite honestly, it's encouraging young people that college is not the answer for everything, and it's not for everybody.
Joe?
I think the best way, and Tammy struck home, a small business owner who can't get people to go to work, probably the solution, even in a small town like Kernersville, is to have the federal government quit paying them to stay home.
Thank you, Mr. Penix. Okay, Mr. Hansford, Mr. Cruz, Mr. Barrow. If you would make the decision on how to use $7 million stimulus that the town of Kernersville receives from the federal government, what would be your top priorities for how to best use those funds in Kernersville? Kevin?
Number one would be to address a lot of the infrastructure issues that we have already in town that have cropped up from some of our rapid expansion. Those would be the things that would impact everybody as a whole. I think we would need a lot of input and data from the community, from the businesses in town, and from the area as a whole on what things they could benefit the most from. Excuse me. And I think that those would be the starting points. I certainly don't have all the right answers for that, but I would start there.
Thank you. Mr. Cruz?
I would first go into our financial department. I think Kernersville has one of the finest finance departments that we have ever had. With Curtis managing, we realize what we need to do to improve and to grow and to fix things, and going out with the citizens, a lot of input that they have is good. but we need to start with financial and have a good, firm, good, solid base to spend that money for.
Thank you, Mr. Barrow.
Yeah, I think I've answered a lot of questions in the paper by saying, you know, how does this affect the people of Kernersville? Is it good or bad? And I thought about that $7 million. Nothing's free. And if they're going to send it to the town of Kernersville, well, the town of Kernersville does everything they want to do through the tax rate they charge. I'd reduce the tax rate. It's exactly what I'd do. Give it back to the people.
Thank you, Mr. Barrow. Mr. Thompson, Toby, what in your opinion about local government's role, what is your opinion about local government's role in the life of local citizens? So how do you see the role of the town of Kernersville in the life of just everyday citizens?
Well, I think it needs to be a cohesive partnership. Obviously, Curtis takes care of day-to-day with the staff on government's role, and the Board of Aldermen take care of setting policy and ordinances. But I think it's a partnership between the citizens and the Board of Aldermen to work to the best of both people's abilities to do the best they can for the community.
Well, the town of Kernersville is a full service community and provides the services that keep our citizens safe, healthy, and engaged. So I think the purpose of having a town government is to do exactly that: provide the needs and involve as many citizens as they can in making decisions. So the town government should take care of its citizens.
Thank you. Mr. Stanley, Mr. Gorham, and Mr. Apple, tell us about a life experience you had that will make you a better alderman.
Having children, because that is crazy. Like, why would anybody in their right mind want to do that? But then you get them, and you care for them, and you love them, and then they show you why. And I feel like it's the same way with the residents of this town, because we have such a great community here, and I'm humbled to be here. I really am.
Thank you. Mr. Gorham?
Just recently, I had an encounter with a UPS driver in my neighborhood, and he was honking his horn behind my car. I had backed up to get the mail out of my mailbox. He honked his horn, and it kind of ticked me off. And we didn't have any words, but shortly thereafter, I saw him in the neighborhood again, and I stopped and asked him why he did what he did. And he said, "Sir, I was just following rules and regulations of my company. It was nothing about you personally. I'm just trying to keep my job." So what I'm trying to say is sometimes we just need to understand the other person's perspective before we pass judgment.
Mr. Apple?
I think the singular life experience that I've had that has hopefully would make me a better alderman, but has made me a better human being, is that about 11 years ago, we had the tragic circumstance of losing my younger daughter to suicide at the age of 29. And folks, I can tell you, there's nothing that will bring you to a point of being a little more kind to people around you than being brought to your knees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Apple. Okay, Tammy, Michael, and Joe, share a big idea you would bring to the Board of Aldermen for implementation in the first 6 months of your tenure.
Well, I'm not sure that this is a big idea, but one thing that I think we could change relatively quickly is the Board of Aldermen meetings, starting at 7 o'clock and ending at who knows when. And that is the time that we're trying to inform the public of what is going on in town. People cannot endure that for that long. There has to be a better way to start these meetings earlier and get through them so the public could actually attend.
Thank you. Michael?
Yeah, I think one of the ideas that I've done this in many other organizations that I've been involved in, and that is when you have funding that is available for a public-private partnership, whether that's a not-for-profit organization in town, to really have a citizen review group who are not related to, involved in any way, shape, or form the people applying for those funds, but a very open community forum and discussion on the town has X amount of money for nonprofit partnership. How should we best spend it?
Thank you. Joe?
Well, I always have dreams and big ideas. I think one is in progress right now, and that's the Parks and Recreation new building that we're going to build at Ivy Redmond Park. And we've been wanting that for decades in Kernersville, and now that dream is going to come true. So I think working on that building is going to be a dream that will be fulfilled for me.
Thank you. Kevin, Kenny, and John. Speaking specifically to your ability to lead, what is the greatest strength that you would bring to the Board of Aldermen?
Well, I've been an athletic coach for over 20 years, teaching kids at the World Championship level. And I have worked with dozens upon dozens of different styles of leaders as co-coaches, as assistant coaches, and have literally worked with thousands of different types of athletes and personalities. And I've learned sometimes the hard way that you have to listen to everybody's voice, and you have to put yourself in other people's shoes, and you have to humble yourself sometimes. But a combination of that many different styles and people has really showed me how to be a good leader.
Thank you. Mr. Cruz.
I took distributive education class at East Forsyth in school, and I ran my own business successfully. After retiring from my record service, I'm an auctioneer. So I deal with people all the time. I'm in charge when I'm auctioning. I have to do that in a orderly manner. I have to control it, and I have to be kind and courteous to my audience to keep their attention and response.
Mr. Barrow.
Thank you. My whole life, I've always had jobs where I worked with people, and I'm a people person. And the last 30 years, I've been practicing law, so I think my strength is communicating with people, letting them know what I think, and listening to what they think, and trying to convince people. That's what you do as a lawyer. You're always trying to convince the judge. And I'm a very strong advocate. So if I get on something, I'm on it. And that's probably a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Chris and Toby. With respect to ongoing traffic and transportation issues in our town, what areas of concern do you have, and what would you like to see brought to the attention of the North Carolina Department of Transportation for change or improvement?
Well, since I've been on the board, we've been very cognizant about the traffic situation in Kernersville. I know we've approved over $2 million in paving monies in the budget in the last 6 years. I don't see a specific issue right now in any certain location. We've been very good about approving or not approving different developments, whether it be commercial or residential, to ensure that we don't have a larger traffic problem until we feel like DOT is aware of it.
Thank you. Toby?
Well, when we moved to Kernersville 4 years ago, one of the first official calls I made was to the DOT to find out what we could do about the intersection at Shields Road and Union Cross, because the turning lane it's almost non-existent. So if you're going north, particularly in the morning, the traffic is backed up and you can't get over it. So you have multiple cycles before you can turn. So I know that's annoying to people that have to get to work on time. So that's probably my main concern.
Thank you. Okay, John, JR, and Bill. If you could change one thing about Kernersville's zoning process or zoning code itself, what would it be and why?
The one thing that I would change about it is more transparency, getting the people more involved, getting out earlier, leaving more time for people to say their voice, and then giving them a platform that's a little bit bigger than here recently a Zoom, or just signing a piece of paper than saying a quick little spiel. I think transparency is key in that.
I think we should do a better job of educating our residents, because a lot of folks here in Kernersville don't even know what these zoning laws are, or when they see the sign up there, they don't know what they mean, and because of that, they don't feel empowered that they can come and discuss this with the government because of lack of knowledge. So I think we need to do a better job of just educating our residents about the various zoning laws that we have here in Kernersville.
Thank you. Mr. Apple?
First of all, I want to say that I second what JR just said. That's my shorthand on that one. But the one thing that I would improve with our zoning process would be perhaps that we as staff, planning board, and aldermen take a closer look at stormwater runoff. We all have heard anecdotal stories about citizens who've been affected by stormwater runoff once a subdivision or project is there. One of three people are going to pay to correct that: the developer when he builds it, the homeowner, or the town. And the homeowner ought not to be the one to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Apple. Tammy, Michael, and Joe, what new divisions or departments do you think the town of Kernersville should add or remove to better serve the citizens and businesses?
This wouldn't be a new department, but just for my experience in opening a business 3 years ago and getting started, I think our inspections department could use some help. I think there could be better communication, and so maybe not recreate the wheel, but I definitely think that department could use some help in assisting small businesses to get started.
Thank you.
My answer is going to be very similar, Tammy. I think the community development department division has some great people in it, but there is lacking some people to enforce zoning laws and regulations once things get built. And I think that is a deficit that we need to address. The other one is around communication, and we've alluded to some of that today. You know, there's the legal requirement to me, which is minimal. That is the minimum of what you should do. Post something in the legal section of the newspaper. The right thing to do is be very outward and very active in that communication, and we're missing.
Thank you. Mr. Penix?
I think the departments that we have in place have been tested over time and are the best I've seen in my lifetime in Kernersville. The department heads are always available to answer questions. They don't say, "I'll get back with you." They know the answer when you call, whether it's the police department, the fire department, the IT department, or the finance department. So I'd leave it like it is.
Thank you. Mr. Hansford, Mr. Cruz, and Mr. Barrow, what in your view is the purpose of the Kernersville Planning Board? How will you use recommendations made by the Kernersville Planning Board in making decisions as an alderman?
The planning board is another cog in the wheel of data and communication that we have in our local government. We can't say that we want to be transparent and that we want to hear what everybody has to say and we want to take all the advice and get all the data without understanding that that is an important portion of that data too. We have to listen to experts and recommendations. We have to take the information they have, and we have to figure out how to filter that into the right decisions for the community using the best informed data. And that department is one that we have to lean on heavily when it comes to that.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz.
Our planning department is good. They can go in, people, when you have an opposition to a program, you can go into them and talk about it, and it gets it out before it comes to us. The problems that arrive in that meeting really help us with our decisions and to go look, so we get to the bottom of every result that they come to, and we can make sure that we make the right decisions for the citizens and for the town.
I've dealt with the planning board on several occasions, and sometimes I agree with them, sometimes not. But I think their best part of their function is they draw out everything that's going on in a particular, whatever the issue is, and then they bring it to the Board of Aldermen, and you got to decide how you're going to go on it, and it's a good thing.
Okay, thank you. Chris and Toby. Alderman approved the appointment of members to serve across various boards for the town of Kernersville, including the Board of Adjustments, Board of Planning Board, ABC Board, and Parks and Recreation Board. What are the criteria or qualifications you believe are important when considering appointments to town boards and leadership?
First of all, those are all very important appointments, as well as the people that serve in those roles. And we do get a lot of applications each year to fill those roles. It's very important to make sure you have someone with experience, someone in the field, someone that has an idea of a little bit about how things work, depending on which role they're willing to, that they're applying for. So, thank you.
Toby?
Well, any position, applicants will be vetted based on their record, and I think that's probably the more important thing. Do they have the information and the education, the training, the skills that we want in the town before they would be selected? So I think the town manager also make sure that the town is run efficiently, and the town manager and other department chairs can advise as well.
Thank you. John, JR, and Mr. Apple. Several municipalities have established enterprise zones and funding for those zones. The town identifies areas that are blighted and then provides funding to help businesses and developers make improvements in those areas. Do you support the establishment of an enterprise zone in Kernersville?
I do not. I actually support a more free market that lets the consumer decide what happens, and not so much the willings of the town.
Mr. Gorham?
I would support any program that's going to help Kernersville grow and develop. But I also would like to see programs that will help people who do not have some of the advantages that other folks in town have, to give them an opportunity to get established, because one of the major problems that businesses have is being underfunded. You know, we have people here in our community who have great ideas, but they don't have the financial backing to make their ideas and dreams become a reality.
Thank you. Bill?
I think I too would prefer that the free market deal with that type of development. The way I see enterprise zones is that it creates another bureaucratic hierarchy that must be funded and can take away resources that could be directly applied without going through another entity to the needs of our people. I do think that our Board of Aldermen and our planning department and community development could be more aware of areas that need that type of private funding and private attention.
Thank you. Ms. Coulter, Mr. Lischke, and Mr. Penix. Recently, an incumbent alderman noted that it takes 12 to 18 months to learn a job in the town government. Do you agree? And if so, do you think it would be more efficient to move to 4-year staggered terms instead of 2-year terms for town aldermen?
I do agree with that. I can't say that it would take exactly 12 to 14 or 18 months. But I do think that a new alderman has a lot to learn, no matter what their background is. If you are new to this office, you have a lot to learn. And so, yes, you're probably just getting started when the 2-year term is up.
I don't know if I could pin down how long the learning curve would be. I would hope in the good Lord's name it would not be 12 to 18 months for a 24-month term. So I think that there is a lot of learning and it takes a lot of lift, however long that is for people to do. So I think that the point there is valid, not the length of time. The length of the term, I think 2 years is too tight. I think that is I think it needs to get to a 4-year term, like the more conventional elected offices that we have.
Mr. Penix.
I'm against staggered terms. We tried that one time in Kernersville, and it lasted about one election period, and we went back to the 2-year terms. In fact, in the late 1800s and early 1900s, there were 1-year terms. They voted every year. So now we've got it up to 2 years, so we're making progress.
Thank you, Mr. Penix. Kevin, Kenny, and John. Several businesses on the north side of town have moved, leaving large shopping strips and buildings vacant. What plans or ideas do you have to help redevelop and improve the north side of Kernersville?
That's a tough question to answer in 30 seconds. I do know there are some little inside things that go on with a lot of businesses where they move out of town, but they still control their buildings to keep competitors and other people from coming in. As far as improving things, I'm not sure exactly what my plan would be, but I'm smart enough to know that there are a lot of smart people that may have good plans that we could work together and come up with something that would create a better situation when we have those issues.
Kenny?
Talking about the north side, that's in my backyard. I'd like to see those buildings be occupied, but at the same time, just because they're vacant doesn't mean that we're not receiving tax from it. It doesn't mean that the rent's not being paid to the landlord. So I think for us trying to contact the leaseholders and ask them for their sympathy and for them to work with us to try to fill those buildings back would be great.
Mr. Barrett?
Well, I think the town's growing, and when it grows, the neighborhoods change a little bit. And the north side of town, we're really not talking about that far from, where the food line's going to move and all of that. But we've seen down here at the shopping center that's right there at the Hardee's that it has been totally redone, and it's full right now. And the same thing will happen there. It's all economics. We just got to make sure that the town doesn't handicap them with rules and regulations and help them to do what needs to be done. That's what government's for.
Thank you. Chris and Toby, the town has a list of typical nonprofits that it regularly supports. If elected, how would you learn or plan on engaging maybe non-traditional nonprofits within the community for funding?
I'm an advocate for nonprofits around town. I've sat on several of the boards. We've increased funding for the nonprofits this up and coming budget. As far as changing, I think there's a lot of factors that you have to look at for the nonprofits. The wonderful thing about the nonprofits we have is they're so active and they bring a lot of people and tourism to our town, which in turn they stay in our hotels, they eat in our restaurants, and that's a huge factor. I think there's a lot of things that play into the non-traditional that just really need to be looked at.
Thank you. Toby?
Yes, I agree. Nonprofits bring wonderful resources and skills to the table. I had an opportunity to tour the Kerner House this morning. a long time in coming, but we had a great discussion about their role in the new visitor center and how they would staff that, and all the volunteers that would come, and the excitement in the community to revitalize Kernersville. So I think nonprofits can offer that, a lot of talent that comes with a nonprofit.
Thank you. Okay, you can breathe a little. One more question, and then closing statements. You've done a great job, and thank you. Mr. Stanley, Mr. Gorham, and Mr. Apple, since September 1st, we've heard a great deal of news about gangs in our schools. As alderman, what would you do to support safety within the schools in the town of Kernersville?
I think that all comes down to getting people involved and having people feel safe, and not making them safe, but having them know that there's a safe way out. And that might be just having a department that specializes in talking with people or specializes in communication with people, but giving them an outlet to where they feel that they're involved, that they're not outcasts, that they have a place here.
Thank you. JR?
Yes, I think that we need to have a collaboration between our schools, our parents, our children, and our law enforcement all coming together to better understand each other. We have a lot of situations where honor is not being given in the places that it should. And I think that everything starts at home. And the problems that we're having with these gangs, a lot of it initiate from the home base.
Thank you. Mr. Apple?
I think in terms of concerns that we might have about safety and security in our schools, a lot of that seems to me to go back to issues of adequate mental health care and affordability and availability, primarily of treatment for mental health issues. I'm not so sure that every problem we've had in our schools from a security standpoint can be blamed on a weapon, but I do think most of them can be blamed on a need for better mental health care.
Thank you, Mr. Apple. Ms. Coulter, Mr. Lischke, and Mr. Penix. Name what you would do as an alderman to encourage more options for restaurants and nightly entertainment in the town of Kernersville.
So my husband and I own Gypsy Road Brewing Company, so that was why I had to chuckle. So we are trying to be just that. We are trying to offer a safe place, a family environment. We manufacture our own product here in town. But things that I think that we could do more things downtown. We could plan more family events. And honestly, Dana, I've lost part of the question because I couldn't get past. Anyway, sorry.
No, it was a little interesting that Tammy
and I was
randomly
like, I can't even right
had
now.
the question. Michael.
Yeah, I think that as a town and as a community, we've come a long way in this space. There used to be nothing when I got here 25 years ago, unless we drove to Winston or Greensboro. So I think we're on the right track. I think our street festivals have become incredible, even when local businesses do what they did at Kernersville Brewing Company just last weekend, or what you all did at Gypsy Road last Sunday. Those are the kind of events that I think are really super cool and we could use more of.
Thank you. Joe?
Well, I've heard people say we need to bring this restaurant or that restaurant to Kernersville. We as aldermen or we as citizens can't do that. The big restaurant companies have their own segment of their business that does their due diligence. And if it's not viable, they're not coming. So it's a problem.
Thank you, Mr. Penix. Kevin, Kenny, and John. With plans approved for construction of a recreation center at Ivy Redmond Park, do you believe the town should continue to keep the current recreation center open for use by the residents on the north side of town?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. Kenny?
I think we need to look at it because the recreation center we have now is close, it's convenient, and it's here in town. And it is operational for us, and the folks on that side of town that can't travel or go across that are not interested in getting on the ball fields and large entertainment can exercise and use it and can possibly benefit from that.
I'm not going to say yay or nay, but it depends on, the demand. If the demand's there, yes. If it's not, then no. That's pretty simple.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Chris and Toby, our town has a significant population of middle-aged and retired citizens. How do you intend on representing middle-aged or older residents as an alderman, and what policies would you pursue that support the older generation of residents in Kernersville?
I want to hear this.
Yeah. I don't know that I can touch on policies of what I would recommend. I think that our median age has decreased considerably since I moved here. I think now it's down to 41 or 42. So we're definitely seeing an influx of a lot of younger people moving in, which is why we're seeing so much growth with brewing companies and small businesses such as Tammy's. I think we've got a good seniors in town have banded together there. I think we've got good systems in place right now that if we can continue with those, I think we'll be in good shape.
Thank you. Toby?
I think construction of the recreation center with that second floor for walking for some of us seniors is a huge quantum leap for us. So thank you to the Alderman for approving that. We are a medical community in a way, so we need to be promoting healthful habits. We need to play more pickleball. Okay, Parks people, they're working on that too to expand that. So older adults, what is it, 70 is the new 50. So I'm with that. Gardening and pickleball. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. That wraps up all of our questions. And so now you each have 2 minutes for a closing statement. If there's a question that we did not ask you and you want to somehow address that, or you just want to kind of give a overview or wrap up again of yourself, take this 2 minutes to do whatever you would like. This time, Mr. Penix, we will start with you and we'll just go down the line.
Well, people have asked me why I'm running for alderman. And I don't want my answer to come across as corny, but I'm running for alderman because I love this town, and that's the truth. It's the only town I've ever lived in. I went to school here, met my sweetheart here, future wife here. Grew up on the town square in my grandfather's drugstore. My future wife's grandmother lived where the museum is. That was her home place. And when my wife would come to town, I would peek out the drugstore window and wait for their car to drive up and run down there, half a block away. And that's been going on over 54 years that we've been married, about 60 years. So I've got a lot emotionally invested in Kernersville, and I want it to be a wonderful place to live for people that are going to come after us. I'm the last of my family here. My children are successful elsewhere in the country and they're not coming back. So I'm I'm the last one. Some of you might want to stand up and cheer, but you won't have to see me anymore. But I've enjoyed working for Kernersville, and I love it.
Thank you, Mr. Penix. Mr. Apple.
I'm not among those who would stand up and cheer. Joe, the election's not been held yet. You're not off the hook. But as one of my good friends one of my best friends who happens to be in the audience has said to me repeatedly, dude, we've got a whole lot more runway behind us than we have ahead of us. You probably won't guess who that good friend is. But in any event, the runway that's behind me, behind Susan and myself and our family here, has not been one without bumps and without potholes. We've had some personal and some professional potholes too. But it's as smooth a road as I think anybody could reasonably have expected. And I don't think I have talked to a single soul while I've been out and about campaigning for anything for the first and only time in my life, a single soul who has said, I really don't like Kernersville. What can we do to change it so that we'll like it better? I want to stay. I've not had a single soul even address anything similar to that to me. This is home, and I think we all should appreciate it. And I know we all love it. I know all of you in this room are here because you love it. So thank you for that. I also want to express my appreciation to all of my co-runners in this election. I don't have opponents or adversaries in this room, but the tenor of these campaigns has been just exemplary. And I appreciate it. If you're not careful, you're going to give politics a good name. So be very careful with that. But I'd like to thank each and every one of you for we put up each other's signs when they've hit the dirt. And that's the way I think we need to continue to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Apple. Mr. Bost.
Well, I'm asking the citizens of this great town for the opportunity to serve on the Board of Aldermen. My interest in this position is not to check a box on my bucket list, but to give dedicated service to you, the citizens, and give you a voice. The concerns you have in this town could be expressed through my service and through others, for sure, on the Board of Aldermen. I have served in public office since 2006 and elected. I'm finishing a fourth term with the Conservation Service, the Conservation District. And to backtrack on the terms, yes, this is my fourth and last term if I'm not elected, because we do need new people, new ideas in government. But by and large, we are there to represent the citizens, and that's what I plan to do. Kernersville is a great place to live. Our home is practically on the Beltway of 74, and so we're here now. We love Kernersville. I say it's an idyllic place. I love walking downtown. I love to have a cup of coffee. I love to meet friends and at Caudill, and I just love the feel of the town. It's a wonderful place, and it's a wonderful place at the holiday. It's a great place to visit. It's a great place to bring my family. Both of my children have bought homes here. We're raising our 3 grandchildren here. So we're here for the long haul, to stay, to be a part of the education system, to be part of local government. We love the town, and I ask for your vote on November the 2nd.
Thank you. Mr. Barrow.
Thank you. I look back over my life here in Kernersville. I lived here 65 years, and I think back about when I was a small child walking the streets and going to school here, and the 4th of July celebration and the horse shows and just everything. It's a wonderful place. And looking up at the leaders here in town, and Roger Swisher and all the different folks that have run the town over the years. Larry Brown, he used to be my ball coach. It's a good place. And some people are hollering for change. We don't need change. We just need to stay the steady course that we've been on. And I've worked hard in my life to get to where I'm at. I didn't start practicing law until I was 37 years old. So I went down several tracks before I got there. But Kernersville's been good to me. And I love living here, and I love the people. And I think I have a lot to offer. And You know, I want to serve. I want to help the town go forward, and I think that'd be a benefit to the town. I believe very strongly that we are Americans first. First and foremost, we're all the same. You know, we're not red, yellow, black, and white, Democrats, Republicans. You know, we're all Americans, and I think we need to work on that a little bit harder. And I'd like to maybe bring that point of view to the board. But I love Kernersville, and I want to see it do better. I want to see it grow like it should. And that's why I'm running. I asked everybody for their vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Coulter?
So I'll agree with everyone. I think we're all up here because we do love Kernersville. Obviously, we love Kernersville in the sense that we have planted 2 small businesses here, and that if you're not a small business owner, I don't know that you can fully appreciate what that means when you dive into owning a small business. I think Kernersville does a great job in so many ways. I will say, I do think we need change. I think we always need change to continue to grow and to keep moving forward. Change is not always a bad thing, and the word change doesn't always mean that someone is not doing a good job now, but change has to move us forward. I decided to run for alderman for many reasons, but one is because I am a small business, and I know I keep saying that, but I'm a small business and I see things and I've had to deal with things. I want Kernersville to be a little more welcoming to small businesses. It's not always about big business. That's not always the change that we need. I hope that I could offer fresh ideas, a fresh perspective. Obviously, a female perspective. I'm the only one up here. I would love for more women to be involved, for more people to be involved. So when I say Kernersville needs change, it doesn't mean we're not on the right track, but we need change. I have been in banking for 25 years. I learned a lot. I grew. I met lots of good people. And I decided when we moved back to Kernersville that I needed to be involved. And so for the last 17 years, I've been volunteering my time. I've served on many boards. I've served with many nonprofits. Thank you. That was it.
Mr. Cruz?
I've lived here all my life. I live one house up from the home I was born in. I used to walk every Saturday up to the Justice Theater. I knew every resident from my house all the way to the theater. We could walk up and go back home, and when I'd go by Drake and Gable's paint shop, if Richard Heath and Carl Ballard and Drayton and all the crowd wasn't still sitting out front and Gunsmoke wasn't on, that I was in trouble. But it was a safe town. I knew everyone all the way from my home uptown, and now every one of them are gone. I don't have any of them. I've lost all my aunts and uncles, my mother, my dad, and we were all planted in Kernersville. We all love Kernersville, and I don't know any other place that I could have enjoyed living and being raised in. The neighbors took care of you. Your mother and dad didn't have to always correct you. The neighbors would do it for them, and you didn't dare go home and tell them they did it. And I just love it. And when I ran my business, I used to look out the window when I went to work for Park Chevrolet. I was a mechanic. I could look out the window and I'd see John over at Safeway coming out with his apron on when he was working over there. He was a lot thinner then, but I could still see him. And I just remember all those things about Kernersville that I love so much. The chief and all would say, "Okay, little Cruz, about time for you to go home, ain't it?" "Yes, sir." And I knew I had to, because he came by to see my Uncle Odell often. So I think if you don't like Kernersville, the best thing for you to do is show me some hind end and elbows.
Okay. Mr. Lischke.
I follow that. That's awesome. No, I think we used a lot of terms up here, and I think change is another term for growth, and growth is another term for change. I think it's interchangeable. I think the town of Kernersville has been served very well by many people, some still sitting up here, some in the audience for generations, and I think we all need to honor that all day long and thank them. But I do think that there needs to be a new perspective, and I think that I can bring some of that new perspective. Professionally, I'm a community health, public health guy. We're having some issues in that arena right now, and but I believe I'll be the first community health, public health person to serve on this board from that perspective. But this is our town, and this is a town where you can watch your child be coached by the same person that you send your insurance check to every month. This is the same town that you can be perhaps going a little fast through downtown and get a little love note from the Chiefs folks right out front and call a neighbor who happens to be a lawyer to help you with those consequences. This is going to be a town where you become really good family friends with your child's teacher and your child's principal, right? So it's a town where it's incredible, and we need to preserve that all day long. And some of the best things now that we have our children who are still in the wallet in college and graduate school, and we still have our 11-year-old at home. Even going to the local grocery store, and from 3 aisles away, you hear my names. You hear Dr. Lischke, you hear Dr. Mike, you hear Mr. Mike, and my favorite is Uncle Mike, because that's what the kids have called me. There's nothing better than that, and I think that's what we have to preserve. And the way we preserve that is by doing things together, by owning up to when mistakes are made, and working together to move things forward. So thank you.
Thank you. General Gorham.
Thank you, Dana. And thank you, the people that I want to represent. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and be with us tonight. And I hope collectively that the answers that we have given to you tonight will help you in your decision-making process when it comes down to selecting the governing body that will make decision for this warm, growing, and forward-thinking community that we all have come to love and to call our home. And I hope that the vast experience that I have from being a top military leader, the manager of a very conservative bank, and the experience that I've learned in state government, but more importantly, the experience that I bring from the other side of the track, the folks who don't get the opportunities, the folks who are sometimes deemed to be marginalized, who didn't get the break that they need. I understand those folks because I come from there. And I hope that you will give me an opportunity to bring my thoughts and my ideas to the town of Kernersville. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you. I, like many others, when I first ran for alderman, I wanted to give back. This will be my fourth term if I'm lucky enough to be elected as alderman. And I've enjoyed all 6 years, 3 terms, and I still feel like I'm giving back. We've accomplished a lot in the last 6 years. We've lowered the tax rate twice since I've been on the board. We've got a new Parks and Rec building coming. We've got 2 new fire stations, a new public works building. I feel like we've made a genuine effort for sustainable growth so it hasn't gotten so out of hand. There's a lot of infrastructure going in around our town to create the traffic pattern around our town. we've got a lot of good things happening, and I hope to be around to see those through. Thank you.
Mr. Hansford.
So I'm not an attorney. I've never been on any boards like a lot of these people here. I do own a couple of small businesses, but they're so small, you'd have a hard time finding them. The Secretary of State, they don't have any employees and they don't make any money. They're just hobbies, basically. I drive a beat up old Chevy Tahoe. You've seen it around town. It's got a big black spot of paint missing from the back of it. And I refuse to get something new. I make less than 50 grand a year. I work for the hospital. I'm just an average, everyday Kernersville citizen. I don't have all the answers to the problems that we face as a community. I don't have all the issues figured out, and I don't have all of the experience that I will need to be perfect at being an alderman. But I'm educated, intelligent, honest, and I'm hardworking, and I'm willing to put in everything that it takes to get my feet on the ground running and to work for everybody in the community. And I'm not asking for everybody's vote. I'm only asking for you to vote for me if I'm your particular favorite flavor. And if not, I can assure you that every one of these people is upstanding, fine person to have as an alderman. But part of that message from me is to, share with you that I mean what I say when I think that this is about community representation. I don't have a last name that anybody knows. You've probably never heard of me until tonight, and you'll probably forget me after tonight's over. I'm just an average citizen here, and I think that needs representation in this town. I'm a single dad. I have a son with a physical disability that has taught me a lot about diversity and inclusion and really having to work hard and learn how to do things that you might not be used to. And I hope you feel like I'm up for the task. So thanks for being here.
Thank you. Mr. Stanley.
So if it wasn't for Kernersville, I wouldn't be here. My grandfather came to work in the sock factory after the war. And then my grandma came, worked in the sock factory, and they met here. They moved down to Hartsville. They moved back up to Kernersville because they loved it. And then I had a bunch of other family that came and settled down here. Had the Staffords, the Knights, the Stanleys, Cooks. They have all lived here. So I am rooted in this town. My whole family still lives here. I'm blessed that they still live here, but they don't want to leave. Why would they? It's a great place to be. And I believe in the people of this town, and I believe that's what makes this town great. Not any candidate, not any mayor, not any department, but the people sitting in the chairs, the people at home, the people going to work every single day. That's what makes Kernersville great. And that's what I want to represent. I want to represent those people, and not the interest of a town, not the interest of a county or state or something that'll get me further on in life. I want to be there for the people because the people set the foundation for me to be here. Thank you.
So candidates, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about yourselves and about your thoughts and your vision for the town of Kernersville and our future. And we are very lucky to have each of you running for public office. Let's please give our candidates a round of applause.
At this time, we will take a break and we will start our mayoral forum at 7 p.m.
I'll just leave that new mask there. Somebody else.
Welcome back to the Municipal Candidates Forum here in Kernersville, North Carolina. We are moving to the Mayoral Forum, and we have 2 candidates this year. At this time, I'd like to introduce Dana Caudill Jones, our moderator.
Thank you, Chris. don't want to keep my back to the audience. Sorry, Candace. I'm going to turn around for just a moment. I want to thank the Kernersville Chamber of Commerce for putting this together. Definitely thank each of you for taking your time to be here tonight, and also all of those who are watching the live stream. And really, let's go ahead and thank both of these candidates for their service now to our town. So with that being said, we're going to get started. So as you each know, you have 2 minutes for an opening statement. We will have 1 minute for each answer to the question. You will both be asked the exact same question. And then you will have a 30-second rebuttal if needed. Not mandatory, if needed. And if you do need a rebuttal, if you'll just kind of raise your hand, then I'll call on you and we'll get the clock set for a 30-second rebuttal. So for our first opening statement, Mayor Pro Tem Fulton.
I am Jenny Fulton, and I'm running to be your mayor. Some of you know me as Miss Jenny's Pickles. Many of you may not know me. My experience come from life lessons that were hard knocks. I mean, the ones you don't learn in school. My father died at the age of 2. The first lessons I learned is how important family and faith truly are. Having to say free lunch in order to eat, that taught me I had a voice. Driving a school bus at the age of 16 taught me responsibility, that parents depended on me to get their children to and from school safely. 20 years of financial industry taught me to be conservative and how important our local economies truly are. I started Miss Jenny's Pickles in the recession. That taught me to be driven and have a lot of passion to produce a quality product. Being elected to the Board of Aldermen by the people taught me how important transparency is. And I accomplished that through Ask Your Alderman and keeping you informed. Throughout the years, I've volunteered countless hours to crisis control, to the schools. I have had boots on the ground. It is important that there are many jobs. Ribbon cuttings, proclamations, that's the easy part. The hard job we faced was the pandemic and communicating with our citizens. I created Ask Your Alderman Zoom, brought in community leaders for 6 weeks, did videos to help get information out. We raised money for small businesses that were forced to close. There were so many times I didn't have a voice. And now that I do, that voice is for you, the people of Kernersville. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Morgan.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity tonight to talk about my favorite subject, the town of Kernersville. We've seen quality growth in our town. This spring, our hospital celebrated its 10th anniversary in Kernersville and announced it is expanding and bringing maternity and childbirth services. A nursing home is opening for our veterans. Amazon opened its distribution center and a second facility in support of its drivers, and FedEx began a $40 million expansion. We've been working hard to keep you safe. Our firefighters are in the new fire station on Highway 66 and no longer have to travel out of town to use training facilities. We supported a new high school fire academy, helping to encourage the next generation of first responders. We've begun installing the equipment for the Real-Time Intelligence Center, an investigative tool for the Kernersville Police Department that will make our community safer. Importantly, we've been good stewards of tax dollars and now have the lowest tax rate of full-service municipalities in the area. I'm Dawn Morgan, and it is an honor to serve as mayor of this amazing community. Prior to becoming your mayor in 2008, I was an alderman and served on the planning board. Our community's success is not by accident or chance. We have carefully planned for land use, for transportation, and for a vision for the future in the Kernersville Vision 2020 plan and the recently completed Onward Kernersville plan. For the past 24 years, I have been involved in planning and advocacy for our community. I am an attorney, I have an MBA, and most importantly, I am a good listener. I have brought my education and experience to serving our community. Experience matters, and on November 2nd, I'm asking that you vote to re-elect Dawn Morgan for mayor so we can continue to work together to make Kernersville a place we are proud to call home.
Thank you. Thank you both. So we'll start with the first question, a simple one. We'll start with Mayor Morgan. Why are you running for mayor?
I have enjoyed serving as mayor in this community for many years now. I like listening to people. I like bringing my advocacy skills as an attorney to my service. I enjoy the technicalities of running the meeting. I'm proud of some of the ceremonial efforts we've made. We have done original proclamations and original recognitions for many citizens, events, and causes over the years, like leiomyosarcoma, Girl Scouts 100-year anniversary, and I enjoy participating in the special occasions of our community. I enjoy the challenge of running the complicated meetings. I like to bring my experience as an attorney, as an advocate for healthcare in our community, for working with our state and federal legislators, and for serving the town. And that is why I'm running again.
Thank you.
I'm running for mayor because I see a need for a different style. I see a need for proactive, to go out into the community, to go to Raleigh and represent Kernersville, to go to Washington, D.C. and represent Kernersville. There's a lot of opportunity out there, and some of it is outside of Kernersville. I really do believe that there are opportunities. One was getting cameras in the courtroom. That was a big push that I had to fight and talk and work through. So we can always get better. And I just really feel like I've done a really good job in the last 4 years of communicating, listening, and keeping our citizens informed. I just feel like there's a much better way of communicating, different methods, different platforms. And that's why I'm running for Kernersville. I love Kernersville. Thank you.
Thank you. So next question, we'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Fulton. What do you see as the greatest challenge that Kernersville will face over the next 5 years? And what will you do to help Kernersville prepare for that challenge?
Kernersville has many challenges over the next 5 years. The first one is we're growing. The ball is in motion. We have 3,000 houses that have yet to break ground. They are single family, they are townhomes, they are apartments. We have recently approved a $120 million business park. That's going to bring jobs to Kernersville. These are people who have never been to Kernersville. Some have, but mainly they haven't. So Kernersville is the heart of the triad. We've got to inform people. We have got to have a plan of action to communicate. Communication is key. We also have to have a source. There's an app that you can put in place that tells all about your town, how to navigate your town, that would help a lot of people. There are a lot of people that do use technology. Technology is changing by the minute. And so over the next 5 years, we have to change with it. Thank you.
Mayor?
I think our biggest challenge is working with our growing community, and I think we've got a great roadmap for that. The community planning process called Onward Kernersville, which was a project jointly of the Town of Kernersville and the Chamber of Commerce, covers areas like transportation, aging adults, arts in the community, the infrastructure we need. And as the mayor of the Town of Kernersville, I would serve as co-chair of the implementation of that plan that has been designed by our community. And so I think that is one of our biggest challenges, and I'm eager to take that challenge.
Yes.
I would just like to add to Mayor Morgan, I had the privilege of working with Chris and Jeff Hatling in naming that program and creating the logo for Onward. So that's what I'm talking about with the vision and forward thinking. Thank you.
Thank you. So this next question is a little long. We will start with you, Mayor. Over the past 30 years, our town has seen significant economic and physical growth. Many see Kernersville as a bedroom community for the larger cities around us, while others believe Kernersville has the ability to sustain its own economy. As you set policy for our town, do you believe it is more important to foster continued economic expansion in our town or manage the existing economy as to limit growth?
Kernersville clearly is not a bedroom community. The data from the planning department and as reported in the Business Journal shows that we have more jobs than working age people who can fill them. And that was before the labor crunch. As far as expanding the economy in our community, we have a great location, but more importantly, we have great plans. We have a great plan for a medical business park where 200 acres were zoned all at once to give predictability to businesses that they would be approved for that location. The Triad Business Park was 337 acres zoned all at once to allow businesses to rapidly move and adjust for expansion and location in that area. I think one of our strengths is redevelopment. So I think if you notice Kernersville, Deer Hitachi, believe it or not, was originally a redevelopment. It was a manufacturing company for parts for a nuclear power plant redeveloped into Deer, and they have redeveloped brownfields. As mayor, I've written letters of support for that. So I think redeveloping our core is as important as having new businesses built.
Mayor Pro Tem Fulton?
Don't kill me, but can you repeat that? Because it was very long. Sorry.
You're fine.
Thank you.
Over the past 30 years, our town has seen significant economic and physical growth. Many see Kernersville as a bedroom community for the larger cities around us, while others believe Kernersville has the ability to sustain its own economy. As you set policy for our town, do you believe it is more important to foster continued economic expansion in our town or manage the existing economy so as to limit growth?
I believe that there's a balance. We are not our own economy yet. We are the heart of the triad. So we bring in more jobs than we have people living here. And so it's real important that we monitor our growth and we do planned development. The development off of Macy Grove Road, that $120 million is going to bring in really good paying jobs. We don't know exactly, but we have a really good idea because we met with the developers over and over, and they hold their properties. They're not coming in here to develop Kernersville and sell it. So we want to continue to build partnerships like that and have relationships. Also, with the medical center, it is growing. Kernersville is being looked at. So it's really important to keep policies in place to maintain and grow accordingly. But we cannot stand still. That's not going to work. Thank you.
Thank you both. Speaking specifically to your ability to lead, what is the greatest strength that you will bring to the town as mayor? Mayor Pro Tem Fulton.
My greatest strength is talking to people and being boots on the ground. I try to go to every event that I possibly can. Everybody can't be in the same place at the same time. But I will tell you, on Sunday, I was at 3 different places. I have been attending different churches. When I decided to run for mayor, I was like, I need to learn more about the church community other than just my community. So this Saturday will be my 13th church that I have visited. And so with that brings leadership. When you're going out into the community that you've never been before. I have visited 12 churches I've never been to. And I'll tell you what I've learned. Kernersville really is united. And when you have a leader that can bring people together and communicate and listen, that's what I do. And as a funny, I take a lot of selfies. And the reason I do that is it makes you smile and it makes me smile. And everybody could use a smile. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Morgan?
If you could repeat.
Sure. Speaking specifically to your ability to lead, what is the greatest strength that you will bring to the town as mayor?
The strength that I bring to the town as mayor is a strength that I've had during my service. I'm an attorney. I take the law very seriously. I take the rule of law very seriously. I take the Constitution seriously. Each time I've been elected, I've sworn an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith. All political power is vested in and derives from the people, Article 1 of the North Carolina Constitution. I believe in a fair government and to recognize that my role in it is power that the electorate, the voters, have given me to serve them.
Thank you. Another long question, I'm sorry. We will start with you, Mayor Morgan, this time. One of the mayor's most important roles in our town is a lead communicator with Kernersville citizens towards the end of keeping constituents informed, but also for the purpose of engaging people for input and involvement in the decision-making process. As mayor, how will you keep Kernersville residents informed of town decisions, projects, plans, and policy?
Yes. That's something we've been working on for a very long time. Kernersville was one of the first jurisdictions to get away from paper agendas and paper packets. A long time ago, the police officer would actually bring the information to us to our door. Citizens would call me Friday afternoon, and there would be no way for them to get the maps or the information about a zoning case until Monday when Town Hall opened. So I'd end up driving over to their house and sharing my information with them. So the availability of the Town of Kernersville's documents online is very important. We have a great website that has all of that information. As mayor, different than being an alderman, I work to draft the agenda. I work with the town manager and the town clerk, and I look for things that are vague, things that are unclear. I look for the order of the agenda. Public hearings also always have to go first, but after that, I try and place the things early in the agenda that the citizens are interested in hearing about.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Fulton?
Just start me off and I'll know the answer.
I'll say it again. It's
Thank
fine. One of the mayor's most important roles in our town is as lead communicator with Kernersville citizens towards the end of keeping constituents informed, but also for the purpose of engaging people for input and involvement in the decision-making process. As mayor, how will you keep Kernersville residents informed of town decisions, projects, plans, and policy?
Thank you. Well, the first thing I will do is I will have office hours. I think it's very important for you to be able to come in and talk to someone, have an open door policy. I will build off of Ask Your Alderman. You will have a monthly or weekly report once I figure out, how much information actually comes through that needs to be dispersed. One thing that's really important to me is I'm going to communicate with my Board of Aldermen. Before I make a decision to go into a state of emergency, I'm going to pick up the phone and call somebody on my board. Another thing is we really need to use multiple platforms. There are so many different ways to communicate. You can communicate in person, you can communicate in phone, by email, social media, Snapchat. There are a lot of different ways to communicate, and I will bring as much of those communication platforms to all the citizens, because it was made earlier in the Alderman meeting. Everybody doesn't communicate the same way, but I will make sure they know I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Name one thing that you believe is unappealing about Kernersville and say what you would propose to change that weakness, how you would propose to change that weakness. We'll start with you, Jenny.
One thing that bothers me is that I can drive to Charlotte and I see the Queen City on the bridges. I can drive to Louisville and I see the Louisville Seal. I can drive to Asheville or Asheboro and see the zoo. You drive through Kernersville on Business 40 or Salem Park or 40 and now Salem Parkway, you don't know it's Kernersville. We need to let people know, hey, stop. We're right here. You've got to come through Kernersville to get to Greensboro, Winston-Salem, to go to the beach, to go to the mountains. We need to do a better job of letting people know we're here. Also, I think it is time. I've talked to Curtis a couple times about our signs. Nobody knows who owns them. These welcome signs, the old signs, we can restore those seals from Rotary, from Lions Club, but it's not welcoming. When you're coming in on 150, you don't know when you hit Kernersville. There's no sign to even tell you. It's a really good job at Cherry Street, but if you want people to stop, you got to let them know where you are. Thank you.
Dawn.
So, the thing about government is sometimes you try something, it doesn't work, but you wait a few years and you try again. So an issue I'd like to revisit is how close the telephone poles are to the road along Mountain Street. And I know that sounds like a small thing, but my daughter just got her driver's license, and we started saying this is the road where the poles are uncomfortably close to the street. You'll notice they're also blocking the sidewalks. John Barrow and I have been talking about this, and I think that I'm going to talk to Jimmy Flythe and see if we can stand out on the sidewalks and look at these poles.
Jimmy, you didn't know you were going to get brought in tonight, did you? Thank you both. Okay, next question. Imagine you are representing the town of Kernersville before a large company looking to come into our town. The corporate executives want to know from you, what does the town of Kernersville look like in 10 years? What is your vision for Kernersville as it will exist in the year 2031? Mayor Morgan, we'll start with you.
Sure, I've actually done that when FedEx came in and was looking at Kernersville as a place. I've met with them, talked to them. I've talked with companies who are considering leaving, moving their operations to Mexico, and they've decided to stay. So that's a role I have served as the mayor. I tend to have an elevator speech where I quickly give you 15 seconds of the best things about Kernersville, and it usually includes stopping by for a cupcake or coming by and seeing our blinking lights, depending what time of year it is, because you've got to have a reason to see Kernersville for a business location, a place of jobs and opportunity, but also a fun place to live, work, and raise a family.
Thank you.
Thank you. We just got our census number. So from 2010 to 2020, we went from 23,000 approximately to over 26,000. So if you add, another 11 years or 10 years onto that, we're supposed to be around 30,000 people. What that looks like is housing growth. A lot of that is happening over at the Union Cross area. So if I'm meeting with a business developer, I'm going to tell them we have housing in the pipeline, and by the time they get here, it's going to be built and ready to go. One thing that's unique about Kernersville, we have an exceptional community. It's called Weldon Village. It is going to be built out to where it's a walkable community. Not many people will be able to walk to the grocery store, walk to the barber, walk to, I hope, a local coffee shop within their community. And if you haven't taken a look at Weldon, that's one of the future developments that I think that will continue in Kernersville. And that's attractive to large companies because they want their residents and their employees safe.
Thank you both. Next question. Tell us about your leadership style and explain why that approach will make you a better mayor. Jenny, we'll start with you.
Again, we just have different styles. I went through Leadership 2020, and my classmates voted me most likely to be a leader. And I just was so honored. It was a great program, Chris. But I have a style of, I'm not going to ask you to do anything I can't do. And since I'm not technically a town employee and I'm not a police officer or fire truck or a fireman, what I have to do is work with Curtis, our town manager, and I have to learn. And I do my homework. And that's what's got me to be successful, is doing my homework, asking a lot of questions, and I bring a different perspective because I have a unique background. I have banking, I have small business, I have manufacturing, I have, public service, and I have, just helping others. I worked at Best Products for 10 years, at night. So I bring a lot of different perspective to being mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Morgan.
Thank you. My leadership style stems from the fact I believe in the Constitution and I am an attorney. I also recognize the practical reality that the mayor only votes in the case of a tie. So you have to convince people, you have to listen. There's always conflict in decisions being made in town government. There's zoning cases that are controversial. There's budget decisions that are difficult. I like to take the approach of letting everyone's voice be heard. As people who've served with me know, that I am very, very much want everyone's voice to be heard. The board members who I've served with will know that I will do a roll call sometimes in a meeting to make sure that everyone has had a chance to speak. I believe in the time limits we've established because that avoids the problem of the meetings going so late and people's voices not being able to be heard. When we had no time limits, people would sometimes leave the meeting before they had a chance to speak. While there's always conflict in local government, I think that allowing everyone's voice to be heard allows for good decision making. And while we may not always agree, there's always the next decision to be made. And so I think that style works well for a small town.
Thank you both. Next question, we will start with you, Dawn. Through the year 2025, it is projected that Kernersville will add 3,000 new housing units and families that will come along with them. Looking towards growth in our town, what do you believe is more important? Attracting new residential and commercial construction to Kernersville, or updating and rehabilitating existing properties within the town?
Both of those are important. It's important to have a minimum housing code, which we recently adopted, and help our older neighborhoods stay viable and attractive. It's also important to have quality new construction. So both are important. And as a side note, Kernersville has planned for all of this. Our planning is the reason we know that there's 3,000 new units coming.
Jenny?
I think we've established there are 3,000 new houses that are coming and haven't broken ground. So I think now it's the time to look at filling what's vacant and filling the, overall North Main. I worry about North Main. We did vote to move the food line. 25% of those people that use the food line walk there. Now it's another mile and one way. So I really do want to look at that area of town and figure out how to do some infill and attract new businesses. There's opportunity everywhere. And so I think it's really important. We've got the housing coming. We've got $120 million business park coming. So now we need to clean up and help build up and bring new things to Kernersville. Thank you.
Thank you both. We hear a lot of political and community rhetoric using the terms inclusivity, equality, equity, diversity. What importance do those terms have to you personally, and what do you think is the place for them within local government? Jenny, we'll start with you.
We have heard a lot about that recently, and everybody to me matters. It is important to listen. Everybody's not made the same way, but I'll tell you that you'll never look at another person's eyes that God doesn't love. And, I just have to compliment, the town has done a really good job. Recently, we promoted a woman sergeant. We promoted an African-American sergeant. They were more than qualified. So I think the town looks at the best qualified individual. It doesn't matter about who you are. If you're qualified, we want the best employees, and we work to promote within. So, we're doing a really good job. I'm not going to say a much better job. I'm just proud of us, and I'm proud of all the people that are running, because we have a diverse group of people running, and that's what it takes to make Kernersville diverse. Thank you.
Dawn?
So I had the honor of serving on a kind of an ad hoc committee in the community with representatives of the chamber, representatives of the community, and with Ernie Pages and Parks and Rec that looked at this issue in the town. And one of the people participating was our fire chief, Chief Alderman. One of the issues facing the fire department and for staffing in the future and for opportunity for people is that most of the people who go to work at a fire department have had experience as a volunteer firefighter. And what happens is you have to live in a rural community to have that option to work as a volunteer firefighter. So people who grow up in urban areas often don't have that background and experience. So that's one of the reasons the support for Glenn High School Fire Academy, and that's one of the reasons for the part-time firefighters. The positions were recommended as 10 positions. The Board of Aldermen cut them to 5, but that's a good opportunity to get some part-time people in the fire service so we can expand that work base. If I can use rebuttal time for just a moment, I have one more. All right. So another thing we're doing is youth programs. We have a new baseball, softball league starting at Civitan Park that Ernie Pages is working on, because children whose parents can't afford travel ball, whose parents may not be able to take them to practice, are not getting the play time to become great baseball players. And so we're starting a new program through the town of Kernersville at Civitan Park to give an opportunity for youth in our community to get that experience, to maybe get scouted out and have the opportunity to play ball at a higher level.
Thank you. Next question. We'll start with you, Dawn. Nonprofits play an important role in our town, and our local government has a strong track record of supporting and uplifting those organizations. Given the limited resources our town has for such support, what criteria or rubric do you believe the town should use to determine funding support for local nonprofits?
I think the rubric we're currently using is good. It's very tight. It's a lot of the social services are provided by the county, so we pretty much don't get into that. The attraction for travel, tourism, some human needs are what we funded, something that's capable of benefiting everyone in the community. But again, if you're using tax dollars to support a nonprofit, then you also have to consider the person on fixed income who's paying those taxes.
Jenny?
I think nonprofits play a very important role in our community. Since I have been serving on the Board of Aldermen, one of the nonprofits that we weren't funding for a long time was Next Step Ministry. This month is domestic violence. And it started right here in Kernersville, and we were not funding that. And so after meeting with Next Step, they put together a proposal, and we've now funded Next Step for the past 2 years. So it's real important to look at your community and make sure you're not overlooking, because they had never received funding from the town of Kernersville, and they started right here. And domestic violence is real and it's serious. And so I believe that nonprofits play a crucial part, and that you can have a group and committee look at them. And if there is one out there that needs to look at it, raise your hand, because that's kind of what happened with Next Step. They just didn't know. Thank you.
Thank you both. With growth in our town, we have seen a high demand for changes and improvements on the infrastructure front, especially with respect to roads and traffic. While the mayor certainly has little control over the North Carolina Department of Transportation, how will you advocate for our town with respect to maximizing the state and federal support we received from agencies outside of local government? Jenny, we'll start with you.
Well, I've had the privilege and honor of serving and representing Kernersville in the Transportation Advisory Committee for the last 4 years. That's a meeting that normally happens every month. Sometimes they skip a month, but I've worked very close with Jeff Hatling, our community development, Chris Jensen, and Pat Ivy. And the meetings that I attend are with all the other mayors. They're from Rural Hall, Walkertown, Alan Jones is there. And so we really bid on our projects. We put them up because Kernersville doesn't build roads typically. North Carolina Department of Transportation builds roads, and they don't build them tomorrow. These have been planned out 20 and 30 years in advance. So I've been working for the past 4 years, and they do listen, because we have a great partnership and a relationship that's been built. One thing real quick is there's an issue in a development that was built off of Macy Grove Road. You want me to stop, or can I finish this thought?
I'm going to let you finish.
Okay, I'll finish it.
Extended that to the mayor.
Thank you. I'll finish it real quick. The business park that we approved was $120 million. It backed up to a neighborhood that was built in 1976. We went out there. I could step in a pothole up to my knees. It was not state maintained. It was not maintained by the neighborhood. These people do not have the money to repair that. But by working together with the developer, with Senator Kravick, and with DOT and the neighbors, that neighborhood's going to get fixed. So thank you.
Great. Dawn.
So I have taken plans to the NCDOT that we have adopted before they were aware of them. They have local meetings with local elected officials before they have a big road project. I attend those meetings, and there's times I have hand-delivered a plan that was recently adopted by the town that mattered. That particular one I'm thinking of was the sidewalk plan. I didn't even have an adopted date on it. They said, we didn't think you had one. So I'm like, yes, we did. We adopted it 2 weeks ago. So being at these local meetings for elected officials to advise DOT, advocacy. I served on the Transportation Advisory Committee for 6 years. The role of the mayor is also to appoint people to serve on committees. And so I appreciate Alderman being willing to step up and serve on the various boards and committees and commissions. I think that my role in the Onward Kernersville planning process, I was the chair of the Transportation Committee. We put some clear goals that we can take to the DOT as goals of the community, and also support using some of the CARES Act for our roads.
Thank you. If you could make the decision on how to use the $7 million stimulus that the town of Kernersville receives from the federal government, what would be your top priorities for those funds, and why would those priorities benefit Kernersville the most? Dawn, we'll start with you.
Well, let's just picks up nicely, doesn't it? So I would use some of the CARES Act funding for our roads and road projects. As Alderman Thompson said in the prior session, we have put $2 million in the past several years into road paving, but there's always more that needs to be done for our roads. Also, the funding was recently allocated by the Board of Aldermen to fund the rec center. With the rise in construction costs, we were not able to include the amenities without increasing the budget for that. So the part of the CARES Act funding has gone to ensure that we have an indoor walking track accessible by an elevator that our seniors can use, and to keep the gym space, the classroom space, and the office space as originally planned. I'd also like to use a part of the CARES Act funding to help some of our nonprofits. I advocated to include in this year's budget additional funding for crisis control and the Salvation Army, and I think that we ought to give some of this money to the nonprofits who are helping people.
Thank you. Jenny?
Well, the first thing is you got to figure out what you can spend it on. There are limitations, and Curtis has done a really good job advising us. One thing that I said, the money came in about a month before the board was notified. So I would like to know about that money when it arrives, and we've addressed that. But as far as spending that money, you got to know what you can spend it on. And we learned that we could spend it on the rec center. We could, use it on lost revenue. And we did have lost revenue with COVID. There's probably $600,000-$700,000 left. We're going to receive the other $3.9 million next year. I think it's 3.9, 3.8. I'm going to be close, as Curtis likes to tell me it's close. And we haven't made a decision with that money. But we cannot forget our small businesses. They were forced to shut down. They have struggled. And so, again, we have Amazon, we have FedEx, we have the medical center, but where are we helping our small businesses? And there's an opportunity to do that if it allows us to. I know we can also help our parks and rec and our arts, but again, we got to find out exactly how we can spend that money. But I would look at small business. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, many of our current elected officials have served in office for multiple terms. Actually, both of you have served for multiple terms. Do you support term limits for the offices of mayor and alderman? Why or why not? Jenny, we'll start with you.
This is my second term, and so I do believe in term limits. I believe in term limits for all offices. You don't want a president here for 20 years because it doesn't bring change. It doesn't bring new ideas. That's the reason it was set up, is so that the person could come in, do their job, and go back home to work. So I believe in term limits completely. I think the alderman and mayor of Kernersville needs to be 4 years. When you get in here and you're brand new, when I said in the paper it was 12 months learning curve, you really need to go through a full budget cycle because so many things happen throughout the year, and it doesn't happen every year the same way. So that was my response, is it's a 12-month learning curve. But I believe in term limits, and I believe, 4 years for Kernersville would be great. Thank you.
Dawn?
There is a term limit. Every 2 years, there's an election. The mayor, the alderman, it could all change. It's a term limit because the voters have the authority to approve of what we're doing or to change their mind. I feel like I would never imagine that the town of Kernersville would be so interesting to me for so long. But I feel like I have the experience to implement new ideas effectively. And I meet with the aldermen when they're elected to hear what's on their mind and their concerns and try and help them find a way to implement these ideas, because you have 2 years. So you've got to hit the ground running. You've got to get right on it. So I bring the experience to that. I also have a self-assessment every year. Every year I take out a sheet of paper and say, what is my vision for Kernersville? Why do I want to run? And write down the things that are important to me. And I could use the mailing I sent out in 2001 when I first ran for this election. My values, my beliefs, and my objectives are the same.
Thank you. All right. Opportunities for growth in Kernersville are not just economic. There is room for cultural growth in Kernersville as well. There are many in our community that believe that Kernersville needs a performing arts center or a civic center. Do you believe that the construction of a civic or performing arts center should be a priority for the town of Kernersville? Mayor, we'll start with you.
I believe that it is time to look at a performing arts center for our community. It is difficult to have so many students in our community study so long their band instruments, their orchestra instruments, their singing, and go into a middle school, no offense, Dana, a middle school gymnasium with no air conditioning and perform. The acoustics are wrong. The parents are sitting on bleachers. The grandparents are sitting on bleachers. We need this for our students. We need this for our community. We have land set aside for it next to the library. There could be a shared driveway access. There's shared parking. And I think, though, rather than building it, what I want to start with is a community plan like we did for the rec center. In this next term, I'd like to see a community planning process start to see what we need, how to pay for it, what revenue it would generate, and what it would bring to the community. So we know the specifics of what we're looking at. And then the community can evaluate it. The Board of Aldermen can get more information about the financial impact, and then we could consider building it.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Fulton.
I think at this time, the rec center, we just voted after midnight to spend $16.3 million. In that rec center is going to be a stage. The little theater will be able to have a home place. They will be no longer in the Kernersville Elementary auditorium. They're going to be at Ivy Redmond. We're going to be able to have a large, hopefully the chamber, our annual meeting will be able to be held at the rec center in Kernersville versus going to Summerfield Farms. It's going to have a stage. It's going to have what we need. So right now, let's do that first and reevaluate where we are, because that land over next to off of Harmon, it could be used for different things. We don't know what we may need in the future. So right now, I think getting that 2-story rec center over at Ivy Redmond is the first place to start with the kids performing over there and the adults. Thank you.
Thank you both. How do you plan to include residents in the decision-making process of our town? Jenny, we'll start with you.
Well, when I was elected alderman, the first thing I said is, I want to hear from my citizens. So our spring folly was coming up. And I said, I want to ask your alderman. I do not want a booth. I just want to stand here for 2 hours and talk to citizens. And I was told, no, you can't do that. In fact, there was an anonymous letter read against me. But the good news is we have all learned and we've grown from it. In the past spring folly, which was held in September, there were several aldermen who were running, or candidates running for alderman, and the mayor had a booth at spring folly. To me, that is so important. So each and every time you can communicate with your citizens, you do. And it's not always in the courtroom. When people come to talk to us, they tell me all the time, I'm intimidated. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. So we got to make this feel better, right? They're not in trouble. And we got to talk to them at events. Again, I travel all over town. You can catch me Tarjay. You can catch me at Gypsy Road. You got to be out visible to be seen to communicate. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor?
Can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. How do you plan to include residents in the decision-making process for our town?
That's something I take very seriously. It was especially challenging during the pandemic when we were doing remote meetings, but I worked with the town manager and with our IT staff to make sure that we could get the calls in, that people could be heard. I enjoy getting emails from people, phone calls. Sometimes I don't enjoy everything about it because one person will call about one thing and then the other person has the opposite point of view. And I have the tough position of having to tell them both the same thing. Neither of them wants to hear the answer sometimes. But I just continuing to be accessible by phone, email. People will call me on Fridays, on Christmas Eve, on Easter, when town hall's closed and they can't get anyone else and there's a problem at town hall. And then I try and get in touch with Curtis or fire chief, police chief, whichever is relevant. People stop me at the grocery store. That used to make my daughter Sarah very impatient with me, but she understands it's important. And as she's grown up, she realizes the value of being accessible to people, whether you're kind of at a school, in a grocery store, at town hall, or at a community event.
Thank you. What is your view on a mandatory COVID vaccination requirement for town employees? Dawn, we'll start with you.
I think that decision should be between an individual and their physician. and I don't think that the town should mandate that.
Mayor Pro Tem Fulton?
I'm in the same camp that I don't believe it's the town's place because we don't know everybody's health situation. And so therefore, if it comes down federally, you have to do that. In my opinion, you got to offer a different choice for those who may not be able to take a vaccine. Unfortunately, General Colin Powell just died yesterday and he was fully vaccinated. So I don't think the town can tell people, but we do need to be safe and we need to wear our masks when we're asked to do that. But I'm not in favor of a mandate. Thank you.
Thank you both. Many concerned citizens live outside of Kernersville municipal boundaries and do not have the opportunity to vote, but they are still impacted by decisions and actions of the alderman and the mayor. The footprint of Kernersville continues to expand, and with it expands the town's extra ETJ. I remember that alderman term. If elected, what would you do to show your commitment to understand the needs and the expectations of those citizens living in the ETJ area? And how will you include them in the decision-making process? Because they do call Kernersville their hometown. Jenny, we'll start with you.
Well, I've been going to the planning board meetings since I'm an alderman. I sit in the back there. Sometimes I get in trouble, but I like to go. And right now we have an empty seat for a person who lives in the ETJ. So the first thing we need to do is get them a voice back on the planning board because there's an empty seat. One of the cases we recently heard was from Eric, the tree guy. What's his last name? Compton. Well, I said, Eric, you've done a great job. And we looked, I said, we can get you on the planning board so you can represent. And he was one house away. So the first thing we need to do is fill that seat on the planning board so that they will have a voice. Thank you.
There's 2 representatives from the ETJ on the planning board, and there's 2 from the Board of Adjustment. We do have 1 position vacant, so if you live in the ETJ area, please consider applying. I think it's very important to listen to the concerns of people who live in the ETJ and who live outside town limits. I treat their concerns the same as someone who lives in the town limits of Kernersville. On a personal note, as far as recruiting for positions in the ETJ, some of the people I've met through scouting are now serving in those positions. So any aldermen, any citizens here who know someone in those neighborhoods, if you could please get them to submit an application, because that has been difficult to fill in the past several years because our ETJ is actually shrinking. It was a set amount, and as town properties annex, it's fewer and fewer.
Well, maybe you will have some takers for that seat that's viewing tonight or in the audience. The next question, Dawn, we'll start with you. With the plans approved for the construction of a recreation center at Ivy Redmond Park, do you believe the town should continue to keep the current recreation center open for use by residents on the north side of town? And do you believe that there are alternative uses for the current recreation center that may serve the town?
My understanding is that the current recreation center is a rented building, and so part of the financial justification for the operating budget of the new recreation center is to no longer be leasing that property. But I'm always interested in hearing about opportunities for parks and recreation for our children.
Thank you. Jenny?
I personally believe you cannot close that building immediately. The people on the north side are served in a different manner. That building is in a wonderful location where children can walk to. They can't walk to Ivy Redmond, and Kernersville is growing. Even though it is rented, it's not out of the question. So we have got to service the north side too. There's an opportunity because there are so many people that live in apartments over there and they don't speak English. We have an opportunity to, during the day while their kids are at school, to offer classes, offer cooking classes, offer financial classes. There is a need. It doesn't always have to be parks and rec. If we are serving our community in that location, we can do it a lot of different ways. And there are classes. There's a great classroom upstairs. So I personally want to keep that building for the time being because you don't want to abandon those children. Thank you.
Thank you both. Share a fresh new idea that you would bring to office of mayor that will stimulate economic development for the town of Kernersville. Jenny, we'll start with you.
There's a couple different things, but this is just a fun because it's kind of getting late and I can kind of see people laying down here a little bit. Again, I mentioned earlier that nobody knows where we are, on our bridges, right? So one thing we could do, there's the Heart of the Triad. We can figure out, we'll work with Pat Ivy, DOT, I'll call Chris, but you know what? What if everybody put their heart and their stamp on that bridge? You know what? You bring the community together. I've seen that happen before, and it creates a wonderful picture by little bitty hearts, and you can create the word Kernersville out of it. And again, that's a fun idea. I have many more serious ideas, but it is getting late, and I'm losing a few people. Thanks.
Dawn.
I think that an idea that I've been floating with various people in the community that I think would be really popular is a Touch a Truck event. I was talking with our public services director about that. The schools in some localities for Public Services Week have a public works rodeo. And my son Matthew, when he was at Atkins, went to that at the fairgrounds in Winston-Salem as a field trip for one of his engineering classes. So I think we could do that on a smaller scale here in Kernersville. I talked with the police department about it, and Blake Jones actually brought some more of the public services vehicles over when we did National Night Out at the farmers market this year. So kind of that Touch a Truck, it'd be like a cruising, but with bigger, heavier moving equipment, trucks, that sort of thing. And so students could, and children could get an idea of what it's like to be up close to a big vehicle like that. During recent Truck Driver Safety Appreciation Week, which was a new observance for the town, I talked to the Best Logistics Group, and they were very interested in exploring that when the weather warms up. So it builds on Dear Hitachi bringing the big excavator and putting it at the town square at Main and Mountain Streets during Spring Folly. It builds on strengths we have in the Public Services Department. It builds on our historic strength in logistics, and I think it would expose people to possibly new careers that they might say, hey, that's, they're 5 years old and it's the coolest thing in the world to be next to a truck. So you may have some people interested in careers that involve that, whether it's engineering to build the vehicle or to operate it.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Several municipalities have established enterprise zones and funding for those zones. The town identifies areas that are blighted and then provides funding to help businesses and developers make improvements in those areas. Do you support the establishment of an enterprise zone in Kernersville? Mayor, we'll start with you.
I don't have a problem with it. I'm just not sure it would apply to Kernersville. I think that's something that the board could study and look in. Sometimes these zones that are in other communities, we look at the Kernersville community and it's too small an area or too few businesses covered. So I think that's definitely something worth exploring and seeing what the parameters are. The thing Kernersville, I think, has done well is to focus on infrastructure. So the complete renovation of Main Street benefited every business along Main Street. Installing stormwater structures and sidewalks in a business park benefits all of the businesses in that business park. So to avoid benefiting just one business, we'd have to do that carefully in this town with our size.
Mayor Pro Tem Fulton.
And I'm in agreement. We've got a lot on our plate. And so right now we need to work on our housing. We need to work on the rec center. We've got, $120 million business park. So right now there's so many things. We need to save the rec center off of Bodenheimer. I don't think there's always a place somewhere, but right now I think there's enough on our plate to handle. Thank you.
Thank you both. Since September the 1st, we've heard a great deal of news about gangs in our schools. As mayor, what would you do to support the safety of our schools that reside within Kernersville? Jenny, we'll start with you.
Well, I was just talking to Chief a week ago, with the shooting, and they are gang related in the Winston-Salem Forsyth County schools. And, people started asking me, Jenny, do we have gangs in Kernersville? I was like, Chief, I wasn't sure how to answer that. And he was like, well, there are gangs, right? So it is important that we support our schools 110%. Just like what happened in Glenn last week. You know, Winston-Salem came together, the sheriff's department, and Kernersville was there. So anytime our school is in need, we need to be there. And I think there's a task force. It may not be gang related, but I'm sure they're working on it. You know, anything they need, we need to give it to them because our children's safety is top priority. We also have got to get them before they get into these gangs. So there's a need for education. And I'm not saying COVID did it, but I believe I heard 7,000 children never checked in on the computer. So they were just roaming the streets and they met the wrong person. Thank you.
Dawn.
I think that the Kernersville Police Department has provided excellent support to the Sheriff's Department in recent days, and I would continue working cooperatively with the Sheriff's Department to provide support for them. The SRO program in Kernersville is very important because it builds the relationships with the children in the schools so that the officers are there and can be a trusted adult in the community. In the past, the district attorney's office has had training programs, that kind of thing, for gang awareness. I think that that is something that Kernersville could certainly work with the district attorney's office to bring a program like that to Kernersville in support of teachers. Maybe teachers could attend and get a little more insight as to what to be aware of in the classroom, different clothing. Even shoelaces can be tied a certain way to indicate gang involvement. I think doing our drills that we do with the Kernersville Police Department for emergencies and working with the teachers on that is also something that is helpful, that we're already doing and we should continue doing. And several years ago, Kernersville was a victim of significant amounts of graffiti. The community pulled together and worked together to remove the graffiti. Steve Hutchins, the local painter, did a lot to help repair the damage that was done by that. And I think that the police department, the community, and individuals with special expertise working together can help keep our town graffiti free, which will take away some of the signposts of gang activity.
Thank you. And on behalf of the Board of Education, I want to thank both of you for your support that you've given as parents to our schools, but also in your elected roles, and always supporting the Kernersville Police Department and their involvement in our Kernersville schools as SRO officers. So thank you both for that. Thank the whole town for that. You really do care. Everyone here cares about our schools, and I definitely appreciate that. Next question. Name what you would do as mayor to encourage more options or opportunities for restaurants and nightly entertainment in our town. Mayor, we'll start with you.
I think that one of the things that happened in Kernersville that everyone really enjoyed was Fridays at the Factory. It was a little bit of music. It was in the middle of the factory buildings when they had first redeveloped. And I think more kind of impromptu musical events around town might be well received. You know, we have a great venue with the Senior Gardens. So I think the town continuing to support the gardens and their concerts and their events is a good idea as well. If you remember back a while ago, all of those musical events were in the front of Town Hall. And as the population grew, there were less advantageous seats, and so we really had outgrown this area in front of Town Hall. So Senior Gardens being available for that is a wonderful thing. But some of these more informal things would be, I think, very well received in the community.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Fulton.
Well, we just had a wonderful event in downtown Kernersville on Sunday. One thing that concerned me were not all the players, meaning neighbors right across the street, were happy about what happened. So I think one thing that can improve bringing Friday night lights and bringing events down is we got to communicate and get everybody on the same page and let them know we're all working together, because there was a parking lot that was completely guarded by security guards so nobody would pull in. So we got to fix that issue first. And that it was shocking to me on Sunday when I saw that. And so there is great opportunity. We are growing. We have several new fun venues. We really want Kernersville to grow to where our children go off to college, they go experience the big city, but they come home to raise their children. And if we don't have the activities for them, that's not going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you both. As mayor, you will not vote on matters that come before the Board of Aldermen unless there is a tie. Explain how you will lead and influence policy and decision-making by the board in your role as mayor. Jenny, we'll start with you.
Well, I think it's really important that the mayor gives guidance, and talks to their Board of Aldermen, before the meeting, not not during the meeting, not there. When we have a hot topic, and we've had several of them recently, we got to communicate. There's got to be conversation. And right now we don't have that. And that's one thing that I will do. I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to call my alderman, and then I'm going to communicate. I'm going to send out an email to my board so they know what I'm doing, because I don't know. Thank you.
Dawn?
So it's my practice at the beginning of a new term to work with the new aldermen and to see what their goals are. I've met with them at Town Hall. I've gone and sat in their living rooms. I've talked with them on the phone if they've been really busy, to try and get the ideas of what they campaigned on that I already know about, but anything else, and see what the consensus is, what the priorities are for the new board. Another tool we can use is a retreat, which I think might be called for this time with 2 new aldermen joining the board, to have a retreat where we discuss the goals for the town. I'm very careful in my communication with the board. I do not send an email typically to the entire board, because I feel like you could run into issues with the sunshine laws, that could be an informal meeting. All it would take is a few replies, and you would be, in effect, having a meeting over email and not in the open sunshine of the public life. So if I have something I need to tell the entire board, I typically will send it to the town clerk so he can send it out from me. I enjoy working with the aldermen. I enjoy hearing the new ideas, and I'm looking forward to continuing to serve.
Thank you. Absolutely. Yes.
I just want to be clear. I think I heard there were 2 new seats. I believe there could be possibly 5 new seats with the aldermen. And also, I have no problem with not getting an email to all aldermen at one time. I just would like an email. Thank you.
All right, we will move on to the next question. Many citizens believe the town of Kernersville needs more transparency with respect to informing, educating citizens on upcoming decisions and how the town spends their funds, their tax dollars. What specific ideas or policies would you support to bring more transparency to town governance? Mayor Morgan, we'll start with you.
I think the agenda is a good starting place, that the information on the agenda needs to be clear. It needs to be descriptive. It needs to be informative. I think our policies of having documents available online, they're accessible to me, at the same time they're accessible to the public, is a good one. We all get the information at the same time as far as the entire scope of the meeting. I have written for many years for the Kernersville News since I was first elected in December 2001. I've written for the Kernersville News, a regular column. It's thrown out into your driveway or on your lawn every Tuesday and goes to 18,000 residents. You don't need to own a computer. You don't need to be a Facebook friend in order to see what some of the things that are going on in the town of Kernersville.
Mayor Pro Tem Fulton.
Will you repeat that, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Many citizens believe that the town of Kernersville needs more transparency with respect to informing, educating citizens on upcoming decisions and how the town is spending their dollars. What specific ideas or policy would you support to bring more transparency to town governance?
Thank you for that. Well, first of all, I think I've already mentioned it. We got to make this a little more welcoming, right? So when you want to come to a board of aldermen, you feel comfortable. The other thing is we got to start on time and we got to end at a decent time. There are countless hours of meetings that have gone past 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and recently 1 a.m. is when I got home. Our citizens can't function after midnight. And that's not transparent. My grandmother always said nothing good happens after midnight. And I just believe that. So I believe that we have got to, have office hours. We've got to have board of aldermen meeting hours and try to stay really within that range so that people can set their time. We want to be respectful of our citizens' time and show them that what we're doing, and we're not trying to do it late at night. Thank you.
Last question. Name one thing that you would like to accomplish within your first 90 days in office. Jenny, we'll start with you.
Well, I would like to, again, establish office hours. That's going to be immediately. The second thing is communication. with my board members, with the town employees. I want to learn every town employee's name so that when I walk in the door or when I'm seeing them, I know who they are. And I know we have 270 employees, but as a mayor, that's my job, is to know that. Also, to communicate with the citizens. Maybe I'll do a, meeting with the mayor, or here's the mayor's minutes for the week, or maybe it's Kernersville you need to know. But I will communicate with you, just like I have with Ask Your Alderman. Thank you.
Dawn.
So from the first 90 days, starting when we're sworn in December 7th, I'd like to work with the aldermen to see what committees they'd like to be appointed to, what their passions are, and where they'd like to have their service. I'd like to consider the idea of having a retreat to discuss the priorities of the board. And I'd like the board to be pulled up to speed as to what is going on with the town services so that they can very intelligently have the information to work with the town manager on the upcoming budget.
Again, thank you both for 26 questions, a lot of time. And again, we appreciate your honesty and your answers for us tonight, so we can learn just a little bit more about both of you. We're going to start with closing statements. Dawn, we're going to start with you first. You have 2 minutes.
This has been a great evening. So many people here who love this community and so many ideas discussed. Some easy questions and some hard ones. As you look around Kernersville and consider our town's future, what do you see? I see an amazing community, a community that values quality growth over quantity of growth, a community that continues to be economically vibrant and attracts new businesses, providing jobs and opportunity. I see a community with great medical services close to home, a community that values its fire, rescue, and police. I see a community that continues to be fiscally strong, making decision buildings, a sky filled with beams of sunlight that are breaking through the clouds. The sun is rising over Kernersville, and our best days are yet ahead. It is an honor to serve as your mayor. Let's continue to work together to keep Kernersville a place that we love, a place we are proud to call our home. On November 2nd, I'm asking for your vote to re-elect Dawn Morgan for Mayor of Kernersville. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenny?
Thank you all for coming, and thank you at home for watching. I just love our new cameras. If you haven't seen them yet, go to YouTube and check it out, because it's important that we move forward on things like this. And I fought very hard, and Curtis did a great job in getting them in the budget. They actually have only been installed about a month, or maybe 5 weeks now. So we are moving forward in Kernersville, and it's with leadership and different ideas and different perspective. I was the privileged one to be the MC for the time capsule, and for that, it was a great experience, and it was all done, together. Alderman Penix helped me that day. That's what Kernersville is working together and being a leader and being an advocate and being a voice. I'm willing to be that voice for Kernersville. And so I would ask you to vote Jenny Ingram Fulton on November 2nd. It would be an honor to be your mayor. Thank you.
Again, thank you both. Let's give these leaders a round of applause. Okay, so I'm turning my back. So that concludes our program this evening. We thank you for joining us in person, and we hope that you have enjoyed it if you were watching live stream, or that you will go back and watch it again. Please remember, exercise your right to vote. Vote November the 2nd. Thank you. Good night.